What is up, guys? I'm DJ Benjamin, Beamon98, whatever you want to call me, I'm here. So I figured I'd do this since, I want to talk about all the Dan Brown movies and books, but it'd be weird to skip over The Lost Symbol since this one doesn't have a movie, but I want to talk about it. And I have talked about Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, so before I go to Inferno, which is coming, we're going to talk about The Lost Symbol, the book, but this one's going to be a little different. This is just going to be entirely me in front of the camera, and less of a script, because, I don't know, I just can't really write a whole script about this without, like, pieces of the movie, like, integrated into it. It'd be weird. So I'm doing this a little more unscripted, casual. I do have some notes with me on my computer that I'll be reading off when I talk about the movie, so yeah, let's talk about The Lost Symbol. So this book was released in 2009, which is after both the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons movies have been released. And I don't think any books have come out since 03 or 04 when the Da Vinci Code book came out, so I think it's kind of interesting because at this point Dan Brown kind of has in his mind like the movie portrayal of Robert Langdon and Tom Hanks and all that, and I don't know if he was expecting this one to get made into a movie too. Well, maybe, because it didn't end up happening. But that's when the book came out, and it was riding off the trails of Da Vinci Code's massive popularity, because Angels and Demons was popular when it came out, but it wasn't like a monumental bestseller. It was Da Vinci Code that kind of blew Dan Brown and all of his novels into the fame. So, like, literally every single one of his novels is author of Da Vinci Code, author of the Da Vinci Code, right here on Angels and Demons, and I have Inferno back here, author of the Da Vinci Code. So, yeah, the Da Vinci Code is clearly his most successful book, so that's what The Lost Symbol is riding on. So this is actually the first of the novels to not deal with Christianity as like one of its main themes or something. Instead, it's Freemasonry. This one takes place in Washington, D.C., the first and so far only Robert Langdon adventure to take place in America. And in this one, Robert Langdon is summoned to D.C. by a close friend of his named Peter Solomon, who is like his mentor, because Robert Langdon's dad dies when he's young, so Peter Solomon is like his mentor, father figure, so he does a lot for him. So one day his secretary calls Robert Langdon up and he's like, hey, I've got a conference in D.C. down today, would you like to come and present? And Robert Langdon's like, yeah, sure. So he goes down to D.C., he actually gets a private jet to fly him out there. I think Peter Solomon gets one for him. And he arrives, only to find that there's no one there, and there is no meeting. What a twist. So it turns out it's a hoax, and later on we actually find Peter Solomon's disembodied arm in the Capitol's rotunda. The Washington, D.C. Capitol building's rotunda. And he also gets a call from a mysterious figure called Moloch, who is the villain this time around. And he says some pretty scary things, or Langdon actually does connect it to Da Vinci Code, where he's like, if this is about the Holy Grail, I don't know, I didn't do anything. Because if you remember, the Da Vinci Code book is after Angels and Demons, but the movie, it's kind of flipped. So it's kind of an interesting connection, because Da Vinci Code book didn't really connect Angels and Demons at all, except for like, it has like one or two sentences where it's like, Robert Langdon became popular after an incident in the Vatican. And this one, it's kind of like that. But these books don't really have continuity with each other, which is fine, honestly. Yeah, so it's a bit ridiculous with the whole severed arm thing, and then there's a code on it. But, then we get into one of the other characters, Inoue Sato. I'm sorry if I mispronounce her name. She is the director of the CIA. She's a tiny Japanese woman who people, for some reason, in reviews have compared to Jar Jar Binks. Like, I don't see it personally. I think she's a fine character, honestly. She's pretty intelligent and smart, and is good at clashing wits with Robert Langdon in occasions, because she's not really, like, she's kind of like an anti-hero in some ways, even though she does want the greater good and she is part of the CIA. But, it's unjustified. I don't understand why people say that about her character. So they come in, the CIA comes in, and they meet with Robert Langdon, and then they say catching the Moloch person that called him is an issue of national security. And then we go down to the sub-basement or so of the Capitol building, because the severed arms code references like a safe that's down there. So they go down there and they find in the safe the base of a pyramid. Like, a pyramid is like this. It's like this, it's like the two ends and then like a flat top. So they find that, and then Sato confronts Langdon about something, because before leaving, Langdon was instructed by Peter Solomon to bring this present box thing that Solomon had entrusted him years prior to bring with him and to never open. So Langdon brings it with him, he doesn't know what's in it, and then Sato confronts him, is like, in that box is the capstone of this pyramid. We just have the base. You lied to me, you said you didn't have anything with you because you didn't know why you were here, so then she tries to arrest him. And that's where we get a little too derivative of Da Vinci Code for my own liking, I would say. So this guy, Warren Bellamy, who's another Freemason, oh, I forgot to mention, all these characters are Freemasons. Peter Mason is like the highest degree Mason you can get. And this guy, Warren Bellamy, is another Mason, so he then comes in and like knocks out Sato and the other officers with her, and then instructs Langdon to come with him. So then they go up, and then meanwhile we're introduced to another character, Catherine Solomon, Peter Solomon's younger sister, who is a scientist in the field of noetic sciences, which I'm still confused what it is. They try to explain it in the book as like dealing with thoughts and like turning a thought into matter or something like that. It's kind of strange, and I haven't really bothered to look into it. It could just be Dan Brown making stuff up again, but you know, it probably has some degree of realism to it. You know, and I honestly don't remember, to be honest. So Moloch, the guy who called Langdon, who's the villain, is able to get into Catherine Solomon's laboratory, and because he like poses as Peter's psychologist, and then he brutally murders her assistant. Like, there's this great detail the book goes into where he like grabs her assistant and like drowns her in a like a fish tank with ethanol in it, and it's like she like tried to breathe, but she couldn't, and then her lungs forced her to take in the breath, and then she went black or something. That you need that. I mean, it does add to Moloch as a villain, which I will talk about later, because I will say he's a pretty good villain for the most part. But you don't need to go into that much detail. It almost reminded me of that one scene in Jurassic World where like the assistant to Bryce Dallas Howard's character was just like, did really nothing wrong. She was just kind of there. And then she gets brutally murdered by like the pterodactyls that just kind of come down and pick her up, and then the dinosaur in the water tank, I forget what it's called, just comes out and just eats her, and it's just like, that was so excessive. What has this character done wrong to deserve that? No, what is this, a no good deed goes unpunished thing? There wasn't even a good deed they did, they're just there. It was just weird, it's very strange. So anyway, Moloch gets into the laboratory, and Catherine manages to escape after an admittedly pretty tense chase scene as described by the book, where they're in the dark and Catherine has to get out of the laboratory and Moloch is going to kill her. So then Catherine is able to meet up with Langdon and Warren, and then the CIA is still chasing them, so they're still in the Capitol building at this point. So they have to escape through, I believe, like one of those luggage x-ray things that like goes through the walls. Like, I imagine it's something like in airports, those things where, if you remember that one scene in Toy Story 2 where the toys are like in the luggage conveyor belt system, I imagine it's sort of like that. But I don't know, it's kind of strange, but I guess I can buy it for the most part. So let's talk about the villain Moloch. I think he's probably the best villain in this whole Robert Langdon series, to be honest, because, well, I think the reason I like him so much is because, unlike a lot of the other books, he is the mastermind and the assassin. Because, you know, in Da Vinci Code, you had the master as, you know, the, spoiler, the teacher, and then Silas, then in Angels and Demons, who had the mastermind, spoilers, Camerlengo, and then you had the assassin as the killer. In this one, Moloch is the killer and the mastermind. And he does have a pretty good backstory, which I will get into at the end when it's all revealed. And he is pretty intimidating. I mean, sometimes a little too comical in some areas, because he tattooed his entire body with like Mason-like symbols and stuff. And he has like insane muscles, apparently worked out a lot. And, I mean, you know, he is a good villain, I will say, even though some parts of him are a little silly, but it just kind of comes with it. His backstory is kind of interesting, because Peter Solomon had a son, Zachary, who inherited the fortune and wanted nothing to do with learning about Freemasonry or any of that, so he just ran off to Europe, and then he got arrested for possession of drugs at one point, and then while he was in prison, Peter did not want to get him out, he just wanted to teach him a lesson, so he stayed in the prison for a little while, and then his cellmate killed him, took all his money, and then just kind of fled, but then found himself kind of bored with life, so the cellmates discovered Freemasonry and was pretty fascinated with it, so he kind of just sought out all these Freemason-like symbols of power and all that and tattooed it, and he learns of the lost word, and then he's like, I want to find the lost word and tattoo it right on top of my head, and then I will be complete and I can do some stuff. It sounds weird. And that's what it is, to be honest. And at one point, Moloch goes to the Solomon household to try and get information from the Solomon family, and he holds the family at gunpoint and accidentally shoots Peter's mother, and she dies. And then Peter chases and almost kills Moloch, but he survives. I find the character motivations in this book kind of strange and a bit unclear, because I know Moloch wants the lost word, and I mean, I don't know if it's like spiritual or whatnot for him, and eventually considering later revelations which make it even more confusing to me. And then, like, you know, I mean, I understand a little bit why Sato is so concerned about catching Moloch and not about Peter, because I forgot to mention earlier, when Sato and Langdon first meet, Sato was like, I don't care about Peter, I just want to catch Moloch. You know, Peter's just collateral, and, you know, it does get a little confusing, like the overall motivations and stuff, and even the first, like, words, the disclaimer at the beginning, because you know the other books start with a disclaimer, this is real, but this one right here, I'm still confused by. It says, in 1990, I don't know if you can see it here, so in 1991, a document was locked in the safe of the director of the CIA, it's still there today, it refers to an ancient portal in an underground location, and it's buried out there somewhere. It doesn't really do anything in the plot. I mean, you could argue the very, very end, it does mean something, but they never bring up what's in this safe in the book unless I'm forgetting something, which I'm pretty sure I'm not. And then, I don't know, it's confusing. There's a little too much things in this book, I feel. And, you know, it does suffer from the problems that Da Vinci Code has, where there's so much in there, and it just kind of gets lost every now and then. I mean, it doesn't try to shove any message about Freemasonry or any of that down anyone's throat. And when it does at least tell something, it's fine. Like, I think the overall message is that, like, Freemasonry gets a bad rap, and it's fine. Because it's not a religion or a cult or any of that. It's just, I don't even know what it's classified as. I guess it's just like a gathering of people. And it is kind of interesting, I will say, that stuff. Anyway, Catherine and Langdon are on the run. They manage to evade the CIA for quite a while, actually. They pull a couple, like, moves on them with, like, getting on trains and like, fooling a taxi driver. And they're fooling the CIA, which, I mean, whatever. And it pretty much turns into the first half of Da Vinci Code for a while, where they're just on the run, and they're trying to prove this secret about finding the lost word before Moloch does, and then finding Peter and all that. And eventually they do get caught by Sato. They get cornered, because at this point, the pyramid base, they find there's, like, clues on it that'll lead them to the lost word, so there's, like, things on them where they need to, where it's, like, symbols about change, so they're trying to change the pyramid to unlock a code, and they find it by boiling the bottom half in water, and then a bunch of symbols on the bottom get revealed, and it's completely undecipherable, but, you know, there's that. It's pretty impressive, actually, the level of detail this code has over the other codes in the other books, which I will give it credit for that, but, you know, later we'll get into that. But Sato does corner the two, and surprisingly isn't all that mad, and isn't even, like, give the two any punishments. In fact, she lets them go raid Moloch's house, because they found it. So, Langdon and Catherine, along with another CIA team, go to Moloch's house. But stuff hits the fan, because Moloch is there, and he murders the entire CIA team with, like, a screwdriver and a knife, and leaves Catherine and Langdon alive, but he, like, puts Langdon in a coffin and makes him think he's buried alive, but he actually just puts him in a sensory deprivation tank, it's supposed to be, and then starts filling it with liquid, and then Moloch is there over him, and he's like, decipher the code of the pyramid and you may live. So Langdon's trying to figure out the code, and he's just looking at it, thinking, and then the water's just coming up to his neck. And then eventually, at the last possible moment, he's like, oh, I figured it out. And then he tells him, and then, of course, Moloch just lets him die. So, yeah, the water floods, and Langdon breathes in, and you think he's dead. Obviously, he's not dead, because there's more novels coming out. But, you know... And then he brutally, like, stabs Catherine with, like, a prick or something, and lets her bleed out. And Peter is there, too. That's where Peter's being held. And he's like, help me solve the code, or Catherine is... I'm not going to call an ambulance for her. So then he brings Peter with him, because apparently they solved this code, and it's a location that they could not find. Time for me to go into rant mode again about something stupid. Okay, so apparently Moloch was not filling the tank with water. It was in fact a breathable, oxygenated liquid that just kind of knocked him out because of shock, because this liquid allows you to breathe it. Yeah, it sounds totally ridiculous and stupid, and I'm ready to go ranting about it, but I actually have done research, and it does exist. I mean, I highly doubt this is, like, really how it would be used, because Langdon does almost die because of the shock and all that, but it just gets silly. Like, how did Moloch get breathable oxygenated liquid? Can you just buy that at a convenience store? And I mean, yeah, he's got resources and all that, and he probably has some money with him because he stole the money from Zach, but it's weird. It's really, really weird. So anyway, now Moloch takes Peter to the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. It's a Masonic, like, monument, not monument, just like a structure. And this is where the ending kind of takes place, because at this point, Catherine has been able to save Langdon, bring him back. Sato comes there and is able to drive them over to there and stop Moloch from uploading a video to the internet. Yeah, I probably should explain that. Moloch somehow has possession of a video of some higher-ups in the government performing Masonic-like activities and the initiation stuff and other really weird stuff that, if looked at without context, it makes them look really bad and creepy and destroys, I guess, America's reputation or something like that. Then we have these people as our leaders, which I think is actually kind of a decent way of, having stakes. Because, I mean, I can't understand that, again, Freemasonry has a bad rap, and they're using that as to the advantage, since apparently a lot of higher-ups in America now are Freemasons. Well, I don't know about that, but, I do know that a lot of the original founding fathers and people who originally founded America in D.C. and built all the structures there and whatnot were associated with Freemasonry, but it does work okay, even though it's Dan Brown. It's not going to be realistic. It's just kind of taking liberties and stuff. But yeah, Moloch has this video. I don't remember why he has it, but he has it, and he's going to upload it to the internet. So, he brings Peter Solomon to the House of the Temple, and he wants to find the lost word for himself also, to make him spiritually complete. So... And then, on top of that, Moloch bought this really expensive knife that he wanted to kill Peter with. For some reason, it was like $1 million. Sure, $1 million knife to kill Peter. Wonderful. So, Peter is able to somehow tell Moloch that the lost word is a circumpunct, which is unpronounceable. It's just like a circle with a dot in the middle of it, or I guess which makes it more of a lost symbol. So that happens, and by that time, the helicopter with, like, Sato and all of them is, like, over the temple, and then Langdon and Catherine and all the others just rushing in to stop Moloch from killing Peter, because Moloch somehow was able to, like, tattoo it on top of his head with, like, a needle or something. And, it's at this point that we learn Moloch's true intentions. Moloch is Zach. Zach just kind of beat up his cellmate beyond recognition, and then he managed to escape with his money And then I think the whole reason he was going after Freemasonry and all that, even though for some reason he became fascinated with it, is because to smite his dad for some reason. Because like initially he wanted nothing to do with it, and he just wanted to be a teenager and party, because he dropped out of college at that point. And I guess he wanted revenge against his dad for leaving him in prison for longer than he wanted. I mean, he was supposed to extradite him like immediately, but he left him there to teach him a lesson, which is understandable, and then he's just getting revenge for that. And then we get, you know, I still don't understand why he becomes obsessed with Freemasonry, like, in that way, because, I mean, was it just kind of a revelation, like, oh, this is actually pretty cool, I want to do this? Because he did, like, once he got back and became obsessed with Freemasonry and started tattooing everything on him, he actually did enter a Masonic lodge and was able to get himself up to the ranks in order to gain access to all this information that he has for some reason. But at the same time, though, it is a decent villain, and, you know, he does have quite a few layers on him. He was wronged in the past, he wants revenge. Things are unclear, but, you know, it's... all these novels have it. What can you do? So yeah, I do think he probably is the best villain in the Langdon series, because he has motivation, he's pretty strong and pretty intimidating at parts. I like his backstory, and he's pretty able to do a lot of things on his own. He's not stupid. You know, he's not like some of the other people in these books, but you know, I like him. He's a good presence, I will say. Oh, and apparently, if you're wondering why Peter could not recognize him, it's because I guess he just got so muscly and tattoo covered that he couldn't be recognized. I guess I can buy that. Anyway, they fire an EMP at the computer, which prevents it from uploading the video, and then the glass on the temple breaks and it falls and kills Zach. Zach originally wanted Peter to kill him actually with the $1 million knife, but now he just dies that way, not having achieved anything, because the lost word that he tattooed on his head isn't actually the lost word. And even if it was the lost word, it would mean nothing, because I don't really believe in a lot of that stuff happening, so I mean, there's no ultimate power to be getting. The reason they were trying to stop him is because he had that video. The lost word search meant nothing. Oh, and I just love this one thing on the Wikipedia article that I found earlier. It says right here, let's see here, Zachary is only briefly able to lament his body's mutilation before dying and presumably dragged to hell. Okay. Good for you, Wikipedia, for acknowledging that he probably would go to hell because he was a bad person and he killed people. He probably would. I don't know. So yeah, Catherine's noetic research data is fine. It really didn't mean a whole lot to the plot that she was a noetic scientist, but whatever. And Peter, you know, confirms to Langdon that the circumpunct isn't the lost word. And I'm still confused as to what the actual lost word, lost symbol is. I think he's trying to imply that it is just the Bible itself. Like, he takes him to the Washington Monument and shows him an old Bible. So, is the Bible supposed to be the lost symbol? I guess so. And he takes him to the Washington Monument and shows him a few other things in, like, the epilogue. It's confusing. I still don't understand it. But, you know, it's what it is, what it is. I mean, it's probably the Bible because of the whole Freemasonry belief of enlightenment and all that, and all the things the Bible has in it. Which is okay, I guess, but still confusing. So that's the lost symbol. The book, no movie exists. Would I like to see a movie one day? Maybe. I'd see it, but the book itself is fine. It's good. It's probably my least favorite of all the Robert Langdon, Dan Brown books, being honest. Because in some areas it feels too similar to Da Vinci Code, and it just is not that interesting when compared to some of the other ones. Like, you know, as much crap as I give Da Vinci Code, it does have pretty interesting things in it. And, you know, the whole story and discovery and mystery and all that, and you can understand why people are doing what they're doing. Well, Lost Symbol, I think the biggest problem, you know, the character motivations and all that, except for Moloch, a bit weird and kind of like hard to tell why. And, you know, in addition to it being just kind of feeling like a much slower pace and just kind of too similar to Da Vinci Code in a few areas, you know, I think the problem is that it just is not as well constructed as some of Dan Brown's other novels. It doesn't make it a bad book. I enjoyed reading it. It definitely has its same qualities of the other books in that they're good mysteries. They're mostly well told over like a single day time frame, and they are pretty, you know, keep you coming back. They're pretty good at doing that. There actually was going to be a movie of this. I hear they were making it, but they instead decided to make Inferno into the movie instead. I guess because Inferno was newer at the time, so it'd be more fresh in people's minds. It's probably unlikely that this will ever be made into a movie, because the Inferno movie did not do well at all. But, you know, maybe Tom Hanks would be down to it. Ron Howard could direct again. I don't know. I guess it'd be okay. But overall, The Lost Symbol is fine. It's not my favorite, but it's not bad, I wouldn't say. It's just not the greatest thing ever. But yeah, 3 down, 1 to go. So yeah, I've talked about the Da Vinci Code, I've talked about Angels and Demons, I've talked about The Lost Symbol. All that is left to talk about is Inferno. Book and the movie. This should be very, very, very interesting. I actually haven't seen the movie yet. I need to start work on this. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you want me to review other movies or books or series, let me know in the comments and I might consider it. Or I might do it, you know, because I love my fans so much. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Have a good day. Yos, home slices. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name. She's the phone.